Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining today's presentation on electronic recycling. My name is Olivia Burns. I'm the Education and Engagement Fellow for Clark County's Department of Environment and Sustainability. Today, we are joined by Jen Rivero, VP of Operations with evTerra, a new local electronic recycling facility. Before Jen begins their presentation, I'm going to go over a few tips to enhance our presentation experience. There is a closed caption option available, which allows you to view captions in the language of your preference. You can find this option by clicking the CC button on the presentation viewing screen. And then from the drop-down menu, select the language of your choice. If you have difficulties viewing or hearing the presentation at any time, please refresh the meeting page and check the mute button to make sure it's not clicked. The presentation is being recorded and will be available on the Department of Environment and Sustainability's YouTube page and the All In Sustainability Leaders Program webpage, which you are viewing on right now. Lastly, if you have any questions during the presentation, you could add your questions next to the viewing screen and we will get to them at the end. And now we welcome Jen from evTerra. Thank you.
Thank you, Olivia. Hi, everyone. Thank you for having us. We are very, very excited in moving into the Las Vegas, Nevada area. This has definitely been a project we've been speaking about internally as a company for a year now. And very, very excited that just recently our shredder here in Nevada has been turned on and we started really getting into the operations and bringing material in and starting to shred. So for this presentation, I'd like to tell you a little bit about who we are in evTerra and go through what does that mean, shredding. I have a short video to show you how our shredder works, and then we'll get into the different parts of it and what we do with your electronics to really capture all the commodities out. So first, a little bit about evTerra. We are a startup. We've been around for about 2 years. The first site that was opened up was in Atlanta, Georgia. I was actually physically there opening the doors about 1.5 years ago. That shredder system is up and running and we are full-blown ops in Atlanta, Georgia. The second shredder system that we started building and opened up was in Las Vegas, Nevada. And that's the one I'm currently in right now. And we're training up the staff and getting that one going. Simultaneously, I have a facility in Elgin, Illinois, which is about 30 minutes away from Chicago, the city of Chicago. And that one is receiving in material. We're sorting, but the shredder is still being built. That one we're expecting to be up and running by the end of March. And then the last shredder, which will be the fourth one for this year, is going to be located in San Antonio, Texas. That one, we just started up the shredder, and that one's probably going to take about 2 months for the build. We're still actually building the site, the building itself. So for sure, in the next 3 months, evTerra is going to be very, very busy. Now, we picked these sites specifically as logistics points. One of the pain points in recycling and electronics recycling specifically is logistics. It is hard sometimes shipping the material around to get it to the proper facility that's cost effective for the client itself. Different grades of material we deal with, especially when you're dealing in the low grade world, the consumer-based items, that's not a high price point that we're able to offer clients. So logistics really comes into that game. So we really thought about it and tried to find specific hubs that we know trucking is very frequent in to make that easier for our customers to reach us. Electronics recycling, scrap specifically, is a very, very fast growing, fast paced waste stream. I started in this industry about 15 years ago, and I could tell you, I see a change. Definitely the assets that we're used to getting, right? Our phones, our laptops, all these electronics turn over a lot faster than they did 10 years ago. Most of us have a phone for only about a year or two, and we're already wanting the next model. So this problem is not going to go away. I honestly think it's only going to get grander with the amount of electronics out there to recycle. Another aspect about electronics that we have to be really careful for is most of them have batteries in them. So that is another angle to e-scrap that a lot of us get into, and that is identifying batteries, knowing their worth, and actually using that as a commodity stream to other companies that that actually process and refine the batteries for their end of use commodity. So here at evTerra, we're a little bit different than some other e-scrappers. Even in the ones I've worked in the past or the ones that I know now, they typically go after more of the high grade material, what we would consider high grade. That would include the desktops, the laptops, modems, routers, switches, things that intrinsically the circuit boards are more value in them. Here at evTerra, we like that, but we also go for the low grade type. A lot of our customer base is the municipalities, is the governments, are the goodwills of the world. And because of that, we really strive and we designed our shredding systems to really handle the low grade material, which is what kind of puts us aside from a lot of other e-scrappers out there. So we like that volume. And what we do with that is we have the capability of shredding it really quickly. We extract as much as the circuit board we can. And we are actually associated, our parent company is called Igneo. Igneo is a refinery that's in France. And the way they model their refinery is they do want the low grade boards. What they do with that is they use a process called pyrolysis, and they're able to extract out all the coppers, the palladiums, the silvers, the precious metals off of these circuit boards. And they're using this to make a product that goes back into manufacturing to make more of these precious metals instead of going in the ground and digging it up. A little bit different than some of the higher end refineries that take a lot of these precious metals and they're actually making the gold bars and the coppers. We make more of a product to push back into manufacturing for them to use in other aspects of manufacturing. So what is the main goal? Our main goal is to get whole units, that is to include cable boxes, low grade, consumer electronics. We shred them up and we are basically separating them into ferrous, non-ferrous, plastics, and circuit boards. And we do this by shredding them in our shredding systems. Another aspect about evTerra that I think is very important, all of our sites are e-Stewards and NAIDS certified. e-Stewards is an industry known certifying body that comes in once a year and really checks upon what you do and makes sure that you're really focused on the issues in e-scrap. One of the bigger issues that we have in e-scrap is what we call the downstream problem. All of us e-scrappers are making a product that goes to another tier of recycler. Sometimes in those changing of the tiers, right, I'm shipping out material, you have to understand what that company is doing with the material. Are they certified to do that with the material? Do they have the right certificates, import, export type of requirements? And that's what these certifying bodies really come in and double check. They're double checking that you're doing your due diligence at all times, that you're checking all of your downstreams and ensuring what they say is what they do. So once a year, all of our sites are being audited by e-Stewards. e-Stewards also requires that you have a NAID certification. NAID focuses on the security aspect of your site. So they come in and make sure you have all the cameras, all the angles you need. We have full key fob. We monitor all entries and exits. They also really hone in on the hard drive wiping. So they come in and audit our whole hard drive wiping system that we have in every site. They also take a sampling of the hard drives that we wiped. They bring them back with them and they do forensics on them to ensure that our programs we're utilizing to wipe hard drives are doing it successfully. So as of right now, all of our sites have, except for San Antonio, because that one is not open yet, have been audited by e-Stewards and NAIDS and passed successfully. The Atlanta site was the first site to get both e-Stewards and NAID, but they also have another certifying body called R2 Rios. And that really hones in on all the ISO aspects. And then again, specific to our industry, e-scrap requirements. We are thinking this year that all sites will also be clicked on to R2. We find that most of our clients, most of our OEMs, and a lot of the larger corporations will mandate that you have these certificates before you could even, have the conversation with them getting your material. So we find these very, very important. We hold compliance very important in our company, and we are actually very proud that as a startup, we were able to pass all these audits very successfully. So I talked to you a little bit about, that we're really focused on how we shred our material. I have a 2.5-minute video here that I'm just going to pop up real quick, and it's just going to show you a little bit of what the shredder does in action. If you give me 1 second, I might have to stop the screen share to change it. One second. There you go. Give me 1 sec to change back to the PowerPoint. Oh. So I'm sorry, Olivia, you do see the PowerPoint, correct? Let me know if you do not.
Yep, I see it.
Okay, perfect. So quick video, that shredding system that you're seeing right now is our Atlanta site, but all the sites will have pretty much exactly the same shredding system, a little bit tweaks depending on layout sometimes, but for the most part, it's basically the same. So the different components of the shredding system. In this first photo, you see all the way to the right, that is the main trough. That is where we're loading in the electronics to be brought up to the shredder head. That to the right, that top tower with the circle on it, is where the shredder head is actually located. So the material falls down in there into the blades, and it's actually being shredded up. Underneath those blades is a screen, and what this screen does, it has holes that are about 2 inches wide, and it keeps the material on the blades until it's small enough, we're sizing it so it could fall down the blades. You want the material to be about a 2-inch width, so people could actually, when it's on the belt, it's actually able to be picked. If you shred it up too much and it's too tiny, it'll be too difficult for people to actually extract out the boards on some of the lines. The first pass of material goes through is the heavy magnet. We call it the 103 magnet belt. That's what you see in the middle left of the photo. So the material goes underneath the magnet, and all of the ferrous material is being pulled onto that belt you see there. That is the shredder heads. It's a quad shredder head, meaning there's 4 rows of blades. Two of the rows are a bit higher than the other 2. That helps grab the material down into the chamber. Now, what comes on that magnet belt? After it passes the magnet, for obvious reasons, the big one is steel. So what's happening is that steel is going down the belt, going into a dumper hopper, and we use local steel yards to actually recycle out all of our steel. In the industry of steel, they actually like us. We go a step into their steel process because we're producing a shredded clean steel that could go direct to the steel mills, and most steel yards don't have to really process that. The other thing that comes off that belt a lot is what we call the copper wounds or the transformers. They have inner steel cores, but they have copper all wrapped around it. So the magnet is picking it up, and that is typically what the people on the line are actually picking out. They're picking out the copper, but allowing the steel to fall to be dumped outside in our steel cans. The next step is we have the incline conveyor. So the material, after it passes the magnet, goes up an incline conveyor to the next separation mechanism. The second mechanism we use is what we call, well, not what we call, but what is called an eddy current system. So very cool. It's produced by a company named Steinart, but what they are 2 polar magnets that spin in opposite directions. And when they do this, they create a field right where the belt drops. So the material is coming on a belt, and right where it drops, an electrical magnetic field is being produced. And what this magnetic field does, it repels non-ferrous material. So anything in the world of aluminums, the coppers, the brasses will actually react to that current and start jumping away. And in the eddy, there's these, what we call gates. There are these 2, what we call gates. We can manipulate the gates. I can move them forward, I can move them back, and I could tilt them depending on how the material is falling. So typically what happens, you do a test run of a certain type of material and you watch your eddy current. You're trying to bring the fins up in a position where you're able to sort out the plastics versus the circuit boards versus the aluminum. So on this photo here, there's actually 3 belts that come off the eddy current. The first one that you see right there is typically most of your plastic. So when the material is going on the eddy, it does not react to the current at all, falls straight down, and most of your plastics are coming on that first line. The second line, a little bit reactive. Some of your circuit boards have some aluminums in it, some coppers in it. So it reacts to the current, it jumps the first fin, falls into the middle, which is your second picking line. And then all the aluminums, the brasses, all of those that really react to the eddy current will jump over the last fin, and those will come up on the third picking line. So typically what we're seeing is on our first line is that first photo, that those are our plastics. And while the plastics are coming on the line, I do have our team members on that picking line. And what they're doing is they're trying to find any circuit boards that they can see to pick out of the plastic, which the eddy current is minimizing, but sometimes they do kind of fall with the plastic pieces. That second line, which is the middle fin of the eddy current, typically is what you see in the second picture. It is more of your circuit boards. Again, we have people there standing there picking, and they're typically picking any of the aluminums that might still come through that eddy current to really clean up that circuit board and make it clean. And then that third line, where most of the aluminums are jumping over the last fin, that's that third picture you see. And that's typically all your aluminums, and a little bit of stainless and brass and coppers do get in there. When you run this material through an eddy current, it's kind of a known package. The steel yards call it Zorba aluminum, and it's just a known aluminum that comes off of eddy currents when you're running electronics. So I really like to really show this a lot, just to really impress upon people the amount of work it actually takes to separate this. Typically, any day on my shredder, I can have anywhere from 10 to 14 people, and that includes the people loading it, that includes all the pickers, the forklift drivers, all of that. It's a very large team that really has to learn to work together to get this done. The second important aspect, I think, and where we really took a lot of care in thinking, is our air filtration system. You can imagine the shredding, even the moving of electronics in your warehouse, moving around gaylords, the propane from the forklifts do produce a lot of ambient dust in the air. And we are very cautious, and we're very in tune with not wanting that in our warehouses. So what we built for our shredding system is a Donaldson air filtration system. You could see that right there in the first photo. It has 42 air filter scrubbers. So in the photos, you see all this duct work going all over the place in the shredder. We know certain points in the shredder have high dust points just because they're shaker tables or the material is dropping. At all those points, we have suction vents that are constantly pulling the air out of the machine, running through the ductwork and falling into the Donaldson to clean out the air. You see two barrels on the bottom of that Donaldson. All dust and fines are being collected. Even the filtration system, the filters, when we take them out, will be sent to refinery to be refined. A lot of the precious metals that we're trying to capture typically are in our coarse fines and dust, and we actually take a lot of care to encapsulate them and get them to our refinery. But after the air does go through our Donaldson, it goes through one pass and one more pass, and that's the right photo, and that is an air HEPA air filtration system, that the air is cleaned one more time before it actually gets pumped out into the warehouse. And that's what I got for the shredding system. Like I said earlier, one of the things I really like to impress when, I show these videos and or when people come and visit us is the amount of labor it actually takes. The first step is all this material has to be screened. We have a very detailed sortation area where all material is dumped out on tipping tables. It is being screened at all times for what we call focus materials. That's any battery, that would include ink, toner out of printers, that includes propane tanks, anything in that nature that we cannot put into our shredder is being screened heavily by the staff first. And the second thing they're doing is they're constantly grading the material to create batches of intrinsically like material to shred together. So I've made something that I lovingly call my recipe book, and we publish it out to all the sites to really train up our staff to know, hey, I have a modem. What do I put this modem with? Well, I could put this with cable boxes because intrinsically the circuit boards are the same when we run them, and we make packages of low to mid to high grade circuit boards to go to refinery. So that's what I got, Olivia.
Great. Thank you so much, Jen, for sharing your expertise and insights on the electronic recycling process. And now we'll get to some questions.
Sure.
Okay, let me pull them up. So you might have answered this already, but how many pounds of scraps is expected to be recycled at the Las Vegas facility this year?
Yeah, our goal, I would say, for the Vegas site would be about 2.5 million pounds monthly.
Wow, awesome.
Yes, typically our shredder, in an 8-hour period, we shoot for 100,000 pounds a day. When it comes to the low grade type of material, sometimes with the higher grade, we pull it back to about 80,000 pounds just because we want a little bit more finesse. But to put that in a better scope, 100,000 pounds of low grade material is about 5 tractor trailers worth of material.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Does evTerra only recycle material you have a buyer for?
Yes, that is actually very, very important. You got to know your outputs. So when we are shredding material, we ensure that we have all downstreams for the material that we're producing. We also have a compliance department that every person we sell to goes through a full vetting package, depending on the type of material that we're selling them. Typically in our world, steel is an easier package to get from a vendor than, let's say, circuit boards or batteries, because there's a lot more hazardous potentials against those.
Great. I think you answered this with that question for steel, but which metals or plastics are in the market to buy back?
Yeah, steel is a big one. That is a very, very high volume for us. I typically, in all the sites, we partner up with a local steel guy. Steel is just one of those things you don't ship around. You want it to be pretty local. And we're really, really running. I'm probably filling up about an 80-yard once a day of steel to go out to the mills. I would say the second one is plastics. We produce a lot of plastics. That is a hard game in our industry. We are actually looking at a lot of domestic plastic recyclers, and we're trying to work with them. When you recycle plastics, it is almost physically impossible to get everything out. So what typically falls in these plastics are the little pieces of wire, the little pieces of copper, the little pieces of circuit board, what they would call the tollings. So we're partnering with a lot of domestic people that we give them the plastic, they float tank it, they separate it out, and we buy back the tollings, the bottoms, the coppers, the circuit boards to go back to our refinery for us to refine for them and give them value. So we're trying to get that synergy and partnership with some of our plastic buyers.
That's a great explanation.
Yeah.
Thank you. Why do we need data destruction if the material is being recycled? So how would data stay after the electronic is recycled?
Twofold. We do have clients, and I've had this scenario happen, that want hard drives wiped. They want the serialized report, and they want me to video that I destroy them. We do have some clients too, and we offer this. This is up to the client themselves, that if they want to share some profit, or we'll pay them more, let's say for cable boxes, if they allow us to extract out the cable box and wipe it with the record in hand, then we will sell the wiped hard drives back out into the market. Then we have some clients that do not want that service at all. They want the hard drives just maybe serialized and a video destruction for them, and we can do that as well. That all depends on what the customer wants. So we have that capability for both of those scenarios. But you're right, that person's actually a good point. We're not big reuse people. We are more end of life. So let's say if I had a contract that was cable boxes, everything needed to be destroyed, I wouldn't even extract out the hard drive. We would just shred the whole units together.
Thank you. And we just have a few more questions.
Yeah.
What electronics do companies generate the most to be recycled?
Low grade is a big game. Now, I would say about 5 years ago, most of this was going into the landfills. And when I say low grade, I'm talking the toaster ovens, the smaller white goods, anything you would think you have in your kitchen. Toys. I can't even tell you the amount of toys I see in my life. But these are all plastic based. They do have circuitry in it. For me, kitchen appliances, a lot of non-ferrous material. They all have motors inside. They have copper wounding inside, so we could extract out the copper. And I think a lot more organizations like Goodwill of the world are really stepping up to collect a lot of these materials. there are specific buyback programs in this country where you could partner up with a company that is helping the OEMs, the original electronic manufacturers, with their carbon credits. So we as recyclers partner with these groups. We actually get a credit back for just recycling these products, diverting them from the landfill. So a lot of these original equipment manufacturers could buy back those carbon credits. So I really see, for me doing this 15 years, I'm really seeing a push in the last 3 to 4 years to really try to get some of this low grade items that were typically just thrown in the landfills out of that stream to get it to us. The desktops and the servers are easy. You know, those are the ones that people are more typically in tune with turning into us.
Great. 2 more questions is are solar panels or electric vehicle parts considered e-waste?
Yes and no, they're becoming it. Solar panels are interesting to me, and we are actually looking into them a lot. The issue with solar panel, a lot of glass. And typically in our life, you know, we don't deal with glass. We don't shred glass. You know, you get some of those particles in the air, you're not meant to. But what we do see some value in some of the solar panels is they are very aluminum based. So you do get a lot of the aluminums, and some of the higher end solar panels are having some circuit boards that are pretty good. So I would say right now, we are not 100% saying we are recycling them yet, but we are looking into what we can do because we feel that market is coming soon to us. So we want to be a little bit ahead of the game. Now, when it comes to cars, you're absolutely right. I've actually, in the past 5 years, I've seen a lot of new car parts, especially the Teslas and some of these higher end car parts, and actually very, very high intrinsical circuit boards inside. We are also partnering a lot with other companies overseas when it comes to the batteries, because I think that's going to be the really new wave of our e-scrappers, is understanding battery technology that maybe we're not processing it, but understanding what's coming our way with some of this new battery technology and finding the right outlets for it.
Thank you. And then what can individuals do to lessen e-waste in our homes and offices?
Yeah, definitely, for sure. A little bit what we talked about earlier is the low grade concept. I think for people at home, it gets a little bit tricky sometimes, because when I train my staff up on understanding, hey, we're a business, we are regulated by EPA. One of the number one things I tell them is the one person EPA does not regulate is you. So we as people are so used to just throwing things in our trash can, even when it comes to cleaners and paints, because there is no true regulation for people to not throw that away. So we try to reach out to people all the time. Most solid waste do have convenience sites that you could drop off a lot of these electronics. And R2 and e-stewards are another really great angle if you go on their website, because I understand some people don't want to take their laptop to a solid waste and leave it outside in a random gaylord that's maybe not being so secure. But if you go on the R2 and e-stewards websites, you could actually put in your zip code and it will tell you a local recycler that you could turn in electronics to. Here, we don't promote it so much, but if people come down with a few items, we'll take it off their hands for them. And I would say for businesses, the best thing to do is try to partner up with an e-scrapper to do a collection event. And it could be pretty downplayed. I've done them where I'll go the day before and just set up some boxes for you guys, put it in the office, put it in a centralized zone. You really tell maybe the building, the staff, hey, the recycler's coming on Thursday to pick up some items, and give people about a day or two to look around their office and really think about it. And then they could toss them into the gaylords, and we could come up another day to pick it up. And we'll give you a full-blown report and settlement report. So for your sustainability, you could see what you diverted out of the landfills.
Appreciate it.
And definitely ask questions. You'd be surprised what our e-scrappers take. Wire, just peripheral wires, we take all day long too.
Awesome. And then to end the presentation, just one final question from the audience. It says, From your experience working in the waste industry, how do you mindfully cope with the large amounts of waste?
That's a good question. That's why we decided to go shredder. In all honesty, if you want to do the volumes that we're speaking of, it is very difficult to be in that dismantling or selling out whole units. I don't like to speak badly about other companies, but I tell people to be weary, to really understand their process. There is an angle in our industry that you just sell it out. It's almost what they say, brokering. They buy material to hold on to it, to broker to different recyclers, but you lose the downstream. You lose the who did you really send it to, because sometimes you don't know how long they held on to it for. And you'll always get a sample BOL to go somewhere, but is that truly your material that went there? So what here at evTerra, we're excited about this, especially promoting this to other recyclers, is that we're truly a closed loop system. You send material to evTerra, we shred it on site, we prep the commodities, right? I'm not talking about a cable box anymore. The minute I shred it, it is just steel, plastic, circuit board, and all the focus material items like the circuit boards are going straight to our parent company, Igneo Refinery. So we could really tell you where everything in the waste stream went. I think that is the trickiest part of dealing with the high volume, is really understanding and always doing your due diligence, engaging and checking your vendors on where it's going to.
Great. Thank you again, Jen, so much. That's it for the questions we have today. A very special thank you for coming on and presenting to our staff. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in and engaging and asking all of your questions. I hope everybody has a great day.
Yes, thank you. You too. Thank you.